affecting us in real time. Reverend William Barber, Pastor Jamal Bryant, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But my very special guest is a history maker. And during Women's History Month, I couldn't think of anyone better than Reverend Teresa Hoard Owens, who is the General Minister and President of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada. She is the first person of color and the second woman to lead the denomination, and the first woman of African descent to lead a mainline denomination in the United States. Elected in 2017, Reverend Hoard Owens was elected to a second term as General Minister and President in 2023. Her ministry actively reflects the disciples' priority of being an anti-racist church, being a movement for wholeness, and welcoming all of the Lord's children to the table of God. Her exhortation to the church is, let's be the church we say we are. It is in being who we say we are that we actively bear witness to God's limitless love for all. Reverend Hoard Owens earned the bachelor's degree in government with a minor in African American studies from Harvard University. Reverend Owens' resume includes more than 20 years in corporate America, leading diverse teams in data management and healthcare and other industries before she entered the seminary. Reverend Owens, welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Reverend Owens, I think your microphone is muted. Okay, in just a moment, we'll get past this small technical difficulty. Reverend Owens is one of the most prophetic female woman voices in the United States today. And I am particularly honored and privileged that she is going to be our guest in this hour. One of the things that I do want to look at when Reverend Owens' technology comes forward is the response to President Donald Trump's speech before the Congress of the United States, which was a rebuttal to the idea that we should essentially be a separate and unequal nation. But I'm very confident that Reverend Barber's remarks were heard, and I know that Reverend Terry Hoard Owens is one of the leaders of the resistance, and she has enormous moral authority. Reverend Owens, welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you, Congressman. It's so good to be with you today, and really excited about the good work that you're doing in this day and time, in these particularly perilous times. So I'm excited for the conversation.
I certainly am as well. Reverend Owens, these are extraordinary times. We've seen evangelicals organizing themselves where they essentially have shared with us throughout history that there must be a separation between church and state. But on the other hand, they somehow have engaged politics in a way that our faith community that is anti-racist has not historically engaged the system, whether it's voting, whether it's advocacy, whether it's lobbying, or whether it is resistance. Share with us how to bridge our faith and the need to engage in civil discourse at this hour to make a difference.
Well, it's important to remember that, first of all, in the history of all religious traditions, particularly the Jewish and Christian traditions, as we read in both the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament, the prophets and the priests have always been called to hold the empire accountable for moral justice and for equity for all. The separation between church and state simply means that the Congress, as you well know, given the work you've done on the Constitution, simply says Congress shall establish no law that will establish any particular religion. We have rules in place for nonprofit organizations that say they cannot endorse a particular partisan candidates of a particular party or use their resources for that kind of work. But what it does not mean is that people of moral leadership are unable to critique the work of this government or actually any other government. We are all citizens of the United States, and those of us who are citizens certainly have the ability to critique the work of the government. And even churches have the ability to speak against those things which are inconsistent with their moral understandings and with their biblical texts. So that's freedom that we have without restriction and reservation to give moral analysis of what's going on. And when we become afraid to do that, then we're really abdicating the traditions of not only Christianity, but every religious tradition known to humankind has given their leaders that authority to hold the world accountable.
You know, theologically, when I think about Jesus in the temple, when I think about overturning the money changers, when we think about rendering unto Caesar all things that belong to Caesar, when we think about that prophetic ministry, we certainly have reflection upon his direct engagement with the government. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. When we come forward, we are being joined by the General Minister and President of the Christian Church, the Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada, the organization's president, when we come forward.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
The revolution will not be televised.
What's up? It is Killer Mike, also known as Michael Render, and I'm encouraging you to listen to more, not less, of Truth Time with Dr. Cornel West and Senator Nina Turner on KBLA Talk 1580.
Gain Super Flings are here to take your laundry to the next level.
Talking about Gain Super Flings. Super size laundry packs. These things are huge. Super fresh, super clean. Gain Super Flings.
Gain Super Flings laundry packs have 4 times the Oxy cleaning power and 3 times the Febreze freshness versus Gain Original Liquid.
Super fresh, super clean. Gain Super Flings.
Gain Super Flings for next level laundry.
Febreze.
Fabric Talk. Hello, my love. I am your living room carpet. I see everything. I feel everything. After a while, I smell like everything, including Sir Pickles, who you snuggle with while binging that dating show you can't stop watching. So, how about we freshen things up with Febreze Fabric Spray? Ooh, and a big spray for my pals, couch and ottoman. Ah, yes, refreshing. Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down. Get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is the General Minister and President of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada, Reverend Terry Hort Owens. Welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be with you.
Reverend Owens, I am obviously very concerned about prophetic ministry, and I want to get to this question later in our interview about the senators who I thought showed no moral courage when they voted to join Trump's budget deal, which essentially gives Trump the green light and an open check to continue dismantling the federal government. When I heard Reverend Barber's speech in rebuttal to the joint session of Congress, he laid out a progressive path that is a liberation theological approach, an inclusive approach, the repairs of the breach, if you will, approach to engagement in these very difficult and trying times. And most recently on our show, I had Pastor Jamal Bryant on. And Pastor Bryant, when I asked him the question about prophetic ministry, he said, Jesse, there are two factors that I think are factors in the absence of prophetic ministry in this era. He said, first, the 501c3 status of the church. The government comes at our churches through the tax status and sends them letters and threatens them to be quiet and not as prophetic as we'd like them to be. Then he said that we all witnessed and observed how Reverend Jeremiah Wright was treated, and no one wants to go through that. And then he said, they see Donald Trump as the second coming, and we are told to keep our churches separate from state. When you do your anti-racist work as general minister and president, how do you bridge the cultural and the political gaps necessary and ideological gaps to build the church?
I think it's really important that we do stand on firm theological grounding, liberation theology, but clearly for many who claim and profess Christianity, if we are ignorant of the actually very prophetic and liberative words of the Bible, we can feel as though churches are going beyond the pale or going beyond the mandate that Jesus and God have given. A close reading of scriptures will let you know that God is a God of liberation, a God of inclusion, a God of love. And so if you cannot frame and read any sacred text without a lens of affirming and claiming this God who is a God of love, from love comes justice, from love comes inclusion, from God comes all manner of advocacy and love of neighbor. So those are the things that we have to keep first and foremost in our minds. What has happened with, particularly with mainline Christianity, and the Disciples of Christ is a mainline denomination. We are 80% white, 10% Black, maybe 6 or 7% Hispanic, 2 to 3% Asian Pacific Islander. These mainline denominations really have gotten into the business of sort of doing good for good's sake and not doing good grounded in a theological understanding of what Jesus has called us to do as Christians. And so when we're more concerned about the institutions that we've built up than the work and the gospel that we claim to bear witness to, and too many of us, and in our church, we have, we talk about red states, purple states. We have red Christians and blue Christians, which should be anathema. Political ideology should not trump our understanding of the gospel that we claim to proclaim. And so we really have let this political ideology overtake our theology. And it's because we don't understand our own traditions and our own texts and our own theological underpinnings well enough. We've become do-good institutions, not prophetic witness, which is what Jesus has called us to. When we do our anti-racism work, we ground it in love of neighbor. We have been an anti-racist church since the 40s, actually. And are constantly trying to reimagine and think about what that must be. But if we say that we love God and love neighbor, then there is no one who is outside the bounds of God's love. And we simply, John Lewis wrote in one of, I think it was his autobiography, Walking with the Wind, he said, we don't have the right to deny the divine spark of humanity that is in all of us. And so as Christians, we have to hold that close, that we don't have the right to deny the humanity that's in any person. So we've got to get beyond this, allowing our ideology to compromise what it is that we believe in, our theology. And too many of us want to silence the church by saying, oh, the church shouldn't be involved in this work. This is exactly the work of the church, to care for the widow, the orphan, the stranger, those who are in need. This is exactly the work of the church, to build a society that reflects the fact that Jesus has come. If we believe that Jesus came and Jesus came to bring forth the kingdom of God, we need to build a world that looks and acts like Jesus has come.
President Terry Hord Owens of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada. She is the first person of color and second woman to lead the denomination, and the first woman of African descent to lead a mainline denomination. I have a clip for you, and I'd like you to listen to this and then please respond.
Sure.
Even now, nations will be judged because how we treat the vulnerable is how we treat God. There is no way to declare in God we trust, but then the vulnerable cannot trust us with power or trust us with the realities of our government. Not only our moral traditions, but what Abraham Lincoln called our ancient faith, but also the commitments of our founding documents. Dr. King would never throw these documents away. He once said to America, if I was in some other country, I might not protest like I do, but I protest here because you had the nerve to put it in writing and write it down on paper. The Declaration, for instance, of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all persons, all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I see my dear lawyer friend in the house tonight, and she'll tell you that there's something else in that Declaration of Independence. It says that when there has been a long train of abuses, it is the duty, it is the responsibility of the people to rise up and to change that form of government.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. That was Reverend William Barber, and my very special guest is Reverend Teresa Hord Owens, General Minister and President of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada. Reverend Owens, your thoughts on Reverend William Barber's thinking?
Bishop Barber is my friend and brother. He is actually an ordained minister in my tradition, so work with him very closely. And I think what he names there is the moral and prophetic analysis, the dual responsibility that we really have, and the rights and the freedoms to which we as American citizens have given. It was put in writing. Dr. King also said that, we can't often change people's hearts, but we can legislate behavior that will hold them accountable to simply do the right thing. I often say to our church, we have enough mottos and strategies. We have a wonderful identity statement. We don't necessarily need new words. We simply need to be the church we say we are. And I would say to America, the United States needs to be the nation that we say we are. These documents, all of the amendments throughout history, we have not only proclaimed the freedom of worship, we have proclaimed that we are going to be a country that is a beacon for liberty. The institutions that we have established and the ways in which we show up in the world, agencies like U.S. Aid for Economic Development, USAID, International Development, the boxes of food that go around the world and actually say, from the American people, we have done things as a nation simply to stand for truth and justice. And if we betray those things, we have moved into a situation where we're no longer hearing from the people. We have a king, an autocrat, who threatens to overwrite all of those treasured documents simply by his own whim. And so the moment that we become afraid to speak, whether we're in pulpits or whether we're on city councils or whether we're in neighborhood associations, we cannot be afraid to speak because we have the moral right to do so as citizens, first of all, and secondly, as religious leaders, as moral leaders who must critique. Bishop Barber ministry, Repairs of the Breach, they have a methodology called prophetic listening. On the day of the inauguration, there were a group of us gathered in Memphis to listen to the inaugural address. And the framework of that prophetic listening is, first of all, to say, given the policies that are being shared, who benefits and who is left out? And then based on your religious tradition, what is the moral analysis that you make of those policies? How do they line up with your own moral and theological agenda? And then what's the response? What action will you take? When we think about who's included and who's left out, the poor and the needy, the marginalized, we're at a point now where if certain people have their way, my own presence as a Black woman leading a predominantly white institution might be seen as a violation of the administration's anti-DEI policies. We've got situations where children of color aren't being allowed to play with a Marine band just because they're people of color. We're being eviscerated and wiped out, and we cannot be afraid. Moral and theological strength has to come from moral strength. And that comes from knowing, as we say in the Black church, knowing not only who you are, but whose you are.
Madam President, let me just throw out, because we're about 4 minutes out or so from the break. You talked about moral courage. You talked about accountability. I thought Hakeem Jeffries did a fairly decent job in the House of Representatives holding the Democrats together on the question of the only thing that we have, being that we're minorities in Congress and minorities in the Senate, is the resistance movement. He did a good job. They send the bill over to the Senate. 10 Democrats join the Republicans after sharing with Hakeem and others that they were going to filibuster the budget in order to make points that mattered to us. I would imagine that DEI would have been part of that filibuster, to run through every department looking for so-called savings, using Black folks, using women, using the LGBTQ as a prerequisite for their entry into these buildings to destroy the Department of Education. And we talk about accountability, and I look at Chuck Schumer in New York, I look at Dick Durbin in the state of Illinois, and I see absolutely nothing but disappointment in 10 Democrats who could have held the line. In fact, we'd still be talking about them filibustering had they did the right things. Your thoughts?
Well, I heard Schumer's comments that said, well, it would have been worse if we had gone into shutdown and then we would have had less leverage. I don't think that's true, because the people are clearly speaking. The people are clearly speaking that they want resistance. And if they see the strength in the people that they have elected to stand and be the forebears or the forerunners, the front guard, if you will, the forefront of that resistance, they'll be enheartened, and I think they'll actually fare better with their own constituents. We seem to think that people aren't paying attention. You're seeing people from all across the country. Republicans can't even do town halls in their own districts because people are so angry. No one covered on March 14th the veterans protests that were happening because veterans across the country are being impacted. And no one's covering the resistance in the streets of Chicago a few days ago, protesting in front of Trump Tower. No one's covering the grassroots resistance to this. The people are speaking, and if their leaders in Congress would step up, I think they would find the groundswell of support behind them. I don't know about the workings of Congress, the rules and all of that, but I do believe that if they understood and paid more attention to the people, and if the people understood that they would be heard, they would not disengage. We threaten having more people disengage because they don't think they're being heard.
When we return, Liz King, Senior Policy Director at Leadership Conference on Civil Rights and Human Rights, will join this conversation. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, and my very special guest is none other than Reverend Teresa Horde Owens. When we come forward.
It's Afternoon Drive Time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 things you should know with BIN News. Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams failed to qualify for matching campaign funds due to legal issues and unresolved expenses. 4 candidates, including Brad Lander and Scott Stringer, secured funding, while Andrew Cuomo is expected to qualify next round. Severe storms killed at least 42 people across the South and Midwest, hitting Black communities in Alabama and Louisiana. Missouri saw the most deaths, while the storm also impacted the Northeast and triggered winter warnings in the West. Black Congressman Maxwell Frost joins Florida Democrats to fight Medicaid cuts, highlighting the state's refusal to expand coverage. Many elderly residents struggle with nursing home costs exceeding $100,000 annually. And Lisa Young Alston, daughter of Black civil rights leader Andrew Young, has passed at 93. Her family and Black Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens expressed gratitude for the community's support. Her cause of death is unknown. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has been at the forefront of inflammatory bowel disease research and care for over 50 years. Learn more about research, education, and support at Crohn'sColitisFoundation.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
In the NCAA men's basketball tournament, 2 HBCU schools receive automatic bids to the 60-18 field. Norfolk State, champions of the MEAC Conference, and Alabama State, champs in the SWAC. Both teams are facing a tough challenge to advance. Alabama State has a play-in game on Tuesday against St. Francis of Pennsylvania in Dayton, Ohio. 3:40 p.m. tip-off on True TV. If Alabama State wins, they'll play Auburn, the number 1 seed in the South Regional, on Friday in Lexington, Kentucky. Norfolk State also has a matchup with the number 1 seed. Norfolk State faces Florida, the number 1 seed in the West Regional, on Friday in Raleigh, North Carolina. That's a 3:50 p.m. tip-off on TNT. Stay with us on KBLA for updates on how men and women's teams from HBCU schools are doing in the NCAA tournament. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, aka the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Texting enrolls you into Recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? Haven't seen you around the gym for a while.
Yeah, I've really fallen off. Since I turned 40, I just don't get the results I used to get.
Could be lower testosterone.
Lower T?
Yeah, I went through it a while back. Once you hit 40, your body has less free testosterone. I got Nugenix Total T, and it's made a huge difference for me.
I've seen that ad on TV. Is it for real?
Oh, yeah. The key ingredient is something called Tesnor, which helps boost free and total testosterone levels to help you trim up and stay lean.
And it's made a difference for you?
Man, I feel like I'm in my 20s again. At work, in the gym, and in the bedroom.
Are they still giving out complimentary bottles for people to try it for themselves?
Yeah, you just need to send them a text.
Text ROCK to 42424 right now for your complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T, the #1 selling testosterone booster at GNC. Plus, text now and we'll include a bottle of Nugenix Thermo, our most powerful fat incinerator ever, to help you get back into shape fast, absolutely free. Text ROCK to 42424. That's ROCK to 42424.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is none other than the General Minister and President of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada. She is the first person of color and second woman to lead the denomination and the first woman of African descent to lead a mainline denomination. Reverend Terry Hord Owens, welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you so much. Enjoying myself tremendously.
Looking forward to having you. Our next guest is also joining this conversation is the Senior Director in Education Equity Program at the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights and Human Rights. Liz King has been on our program before. Liz, welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be back.
I'm so glad to have you here. Liz, we were just having a conversation about the hard work that Hakeem Jeffries had done in the House to stop the budget that was being offered by the MAGA crowd that would give essentially a blank check to Donald Trump to continue running through federal agencies, downsizing the government without any congressional accountability, and the expectations that they had that the Senate of the United States would do something about it. They did have this expectation that Chuck Schumer would lead them to a filibuster, and obviously we're witnessing the backlash. Please give us your comments, your thoughts about what it means for these 10 Democrats to not support the resistance movement.
Well, what we're seeing here, obviously, in so many examples, is a failure of congressional leadership. I mean, there are not many tools available to the minority party, but one of those tools is the opportunity to vote no and say, this is a bad bill. This is a bad deal for the American people. And we have seen members of Congress have made different choices about how to proceed on that one. I mean, it really is. Now is the time. Now is the time for accountability. Now is the time for leadership. Now is the time to show up and tell your constituents who you are. And also to remember that notes are being taken, names are being written down, and there will be a need to account for this for years and years to come. We think about what's happening now with Leader McConnell and the scenario in which what Leader McConnell is going to leave this earth having offered to us is a revival of polio. I have been really struck by that. I've been struck by what it means for these individuals who have been elected by their constituents to show up for American values, to show up for the best interest of their communities and their constituents. And I think now is the time for the people to show up and make their demand heard, make their demand clear. What we expect. We have 3 branches of government. It's about time that people start acting like it. We have seen some courageous judges appointed by both Democrats and Republicans who have shown up and said, no, this is what the law says. You are not king. Literally saying you are not king. And I think it is incredibly important that our legislative branch shows up by the same token and says, we will not let you steamroll our civil rights. We will not let you take our civil rights laws that people fought and died for, thinking here we are on March 17th, thinking about April 4th on its way, thinking about May 17th on its way, these important anniversaries of moments in the civil rights movement. And really, it is just profoundly disappointing the way in which the people are being let down by their legislators. And so it is time for the people to show up and to speak out and to shut down the phone lines and to visit those offices. I mean, we're right now in a congressional recess. And every single senator and every single House member has a local office and deserves to hear from their constituents. So by whatever means you move around, get yourself to those local offices and demand to be heard. Demand to have a meeting. Demand the opportunity to ask why this is happening. Show up and say, what are you doing? What are you doing to show up for us, your constituents? And I think that is just so incredibly important right now during this congressional recess while they're back home. And then again, when they go back to Washington. I mean, this is the question we've all got to be asking.
President Owens, I was in Congress for 17 years. And in our reflection prior to Liz joining the call, joining the show, I thought about the idea of moral compass and accountability.
Yeah.
These are politicians, but we often don't associate them with moral compass and accountability. It's almost as if they don't recognize the moment and the hour to carry the cross or to stand up. Can you help us think through what the absence of moral compass and accountability, even in the resistance movement, what it means for us?
You know, a moral compass, regardless of what your religious faith or tradition is, humanity, sharing the planet with other people gives us a moral compass. We have to consider one another in order to live together. In the United States, our sacred documents that established this republic and this democracy are grounded in some sort of common understanding of how human beings must live together. And so we all have that deep down. And the fact that we would neglect that, it's not just a thing for religious people to hold up, it's a thing for human beings to pay attention to so that we all can thrive and flourish together, no matter what your religious tradition is. Every single religious tradition on the face of the earth has some version of the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. There's some version of love your neighbor in every single sacred text. Even if you say that you're an atheist, if you are devoid of, and someone said that the absence of empathy is perhaps the presence of evil. That's what evil means, the absence of empathy. And so if we don't have that human concern one for another, regardless of religious holdings, then I think we're in deep trouble. We're created with a moral compass to care for each other. At the very least, we should have that, and we should not be afraid to stand on that, regardless of your religious standing.
President Owens, but a number of Democrats did vote against giving Donald Trump an open check. I'd like to think that they had a moral compass, but there are 10 of them. There are 10 of them that looked at the moral compass and said, I'm somewhere between the moral compass and making a decision that allows the president of the United States to continue this behavior.
And whenever I see people making decisions that violate what would clearly be the moral choice, I always say to myself, what is more important? There is something that is more important. Is it power? Is it money? There's some kind of calculus that people are making. And when there's some personal or selfish reasoning that becomes more important to you than doing what is necessary for the greater good or for community, that I have questions about whether you should hold those offices. Something is more important. And we need to hold people accountable and ask that question. What is it? Tell us what it is as your constituents. What's more important than us? What's more important? I want to hear the answer to that question.
I do too. Dick Durbin, Chuck Schumer, Liz, there are a number of senators who have a day of accountability coming in the next election. Your thoughts, Liz? We have about 2 minutes before we have to come forward.
Sure, no one should wait for the next election. The time for accountability is now, right? Elections are a really important accountability mechanism we have for our elected leaders, but they are not the only accountability mechanisms. And that is why we are saying, get to those offices. Go visit. Mr. Durbin has offices throughout the state of Illinois. Get yourself to one of those offices and ask him, what are you doing to protect us, to protect the Constitution, and to protect our future? Go now. Go ask, what are you doing?
I'm deeply concerned about the behavior of those 10 who sat the process out. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, President Teresa Hord Owens and Liz King will be my special guests.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting enrolls for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop, opt out. Individual results may vary. Consult a doctor prior to use.
If you've struggled to lose weight in the past, this important message is for you because you could lose as much as 50 pounds or more with Zelfie. Zelfie makes it easy and affordable to get weight loss treatment 100% online. Zelfie providers can prescribe FDA-approved GLP-1 weight loss medications clinically shown to help people lose weight like Wegovy, Zepbound, and others. Plus, help get the medication covered by insurance so it's as little as $0 a month.
The doctors are super helpful, and the meds have been a game changer. It's the first program I've had success with.
Before Zelfie, I was unable to lose weight, even though I was eating healthy and exercising 6 days a week. Zelfie helped me not only lose weight, but I feel so much better.
Text GOAL to 200-300 to get started today with Zelfie and see if weight loss medications like Wegovy or Zepbound are right for you. Don't wait. Text now for a link to your exclusive offer. Text GOAL to 200-300. That's GOAL to 200-300. GOAL to 200-300.
A new day is on the horizon.
Behind every great moment in history, there's a woman whose story went untold. This March on KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing those hidden narratives to light. Hear extraordinary stories of women who transformed science, politics, arts, and community. Women you've never heard of, but should know. Celebrating Women's History Month on KBLA Talk 1580, where every story matters.
I can't believe how spotless my floors look after using the Swiffer Power Mop. No more dragging around a heavy mop and messy bucket. Now I get the same deep clean without all the work. Thanks to the powerful solution and scrubbing pad of the Swiffer Power Mop, dirt and grime don't stand a chance, and I don't break a sweat. Mic drop. Mop drop.
Swiffer Power Mop. Swiffer Power Mop.
A smarter way to mop. Try it or your money back.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. and welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest is the General Minister and President of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada, Teresa Hord Owens, elected in 2017. Reverend Owens was elected to a second term as General Minister and President in 2023. Reverend Owens, welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Great to be here.
And my other guest is Liz King, who's been on our show before, Senior Director, Education Equity Program at the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. Liz, welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you, Congressman. Glad to be here.
Liz, a quick question for both you and Reverend Owens. If Senator Dick Durbin and Senator Chuck Schumer were on our show, what question would you ask them on Women's History Month in light of what we just witnessed a few days ago? That question for both of you. Liz?
Yeah, I would ask why. I mean, I think that President Owens really just said it. Who do you serve? Why are you here? What are you doing here? I mean, when in the history has the job of United States Senator been more important than this moment? And to whom are you accountable? And who do you serve? I think is just the core question. How will we continue to protect the Constitution and to advance the critical civil and human rights of our people in this moment, in the absence of congressional leadership? And so it really does need to be a question of what are you doing to show up for us as Illinoisans? What are you doing to show up for our proud history of democracy? It is not that old, right? Wade always reminds us our democracy only really started in 1965. But what are you doing to show up and protect our people and make sure we have access to Medicaid and make sure we have access to an education and make sure we have access to an economy that works for all of us? And I think that is the question that I would ask Senator Schumer and Senator Durbin and every single member of Congress, because this is not just a partisan issue. Republicans, people in Republican congressional districts, they deserve to be represented too. They deserve to have access to affordable nutrition and affordable housing. They deserve to have access to a quality education. And so I would say that of anyone, what are you doing to protect our civil rights and ensure each of us has the opportunity to use our gifts and talents and thrive in this multiracial democracy? What are you doing and how are you showing up for us?
Madam President?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the question. What are you doing and what's more important than us? I mean, the data will tell us that there are over 140 million people in this country who live beneath the poverty line, while there are a higher percentage of people of color who live in those poverty designations. There are more poor white people than there are poor people of color. It is the red states that are being impacted by these tariffs, and not only the tariffs, but the retaliatory tariffs that people are carefully looking at places where the administration's voter base is, because they're intentionally trying to hurt back and cut those folks off. People have been lied to, they have been deluded, and they're starting to wake up all over the place. And we as a denomination, in fact, one of the most important things that's happened recently in terms of the action we're taking, we joined a lawsuit with 26 other faith bodies to oppose the recent rescinding of the sensitive locations policy that gave protection for many years to churches, hospitals, and schools against ICE enforcement coming in. And we're standing on both the First Amendment and the Religious Freedom Restoration Act to say we have the freedom to worship and serve as we choose. And the government does not have on any grounds the ability or the right to come in to any places of worship and tell us what we can do in those spaces, how we can worship, how we can serve, how we can live out our faith. And so the fact that you have so many groups of religious folks who are willing to join legal actions to stand up is saying we're not going to sit quietly by and allow this to take place. I'm so proud of the church I lead for having the courage. Our general board unanimously voted for us to join this lawsuit as a denomination. There are others who've joined us, but it's time for us to stand up and speak up and show up in important ways. We're not giving money to any political parties. We're not violating any of the 501c3 designations, but we have the moral authority to critique not only this government, but any other government in the world that violates these basic foundational values that we hold as both people of faith and really as citizens of the world. We have the right to offer those critiques.
President Owens, a bright moment of resistance when Congressman Al Green of Texas stood up in the House chamber in defiance on the question of Medicaid. These moments of resistance also matter in our protests, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And all of the when we see the inequity with which those moments are treated, when we had President Obama and President Biden treated to such disrespect in the chamber, to have him simply say this is not true, to be willing to take the consequences of his speaking up. That's another thing. If you speak against unjust laws or unjust policies, you bear the consequences, because that's part of the weapon of resistance, is to continue to show the contrast between what is good and what is right versus what is being perpetrated. What is legal is not necessarily immoral, and what is illegal is not necessarily immoral.
Liz, the overwhelmingly shock and awe, or shockingly awful executive orders that the president has issued amongst the American people has obviously shaken the foundation of Washington, D.C. The slow pace by which the courts respond to these orders, and the fact that DOJ, as well as the president's efforts, continue even in spite of the orders, sometimes in defiance of the orders. Your thoughts on what that truly means for the future of our democracy and the republic?
Yeah, I mean, we have to remember here at the core is the question of we, the American people, and what are we going to do, and who are we going to hold accountable, and are we going to allow them to call this normal? Are we going to allow them to call this the result of an election? Are we going to allow them to take away our civil rights, to tell us to hate our neighbor, to tell us to become mean and spiteful people who seek to take from others instead of working together to grow together? And I think there is just, the media is trying to keep up. They're trying to tell the story, but there is just so much information we need to get in people's hands so they know what's going on, so that they can make a distinction between what's just awful noise and what's a real consequence that is going on here. I think one of the things that we're being reminded of in this moment is the power of our diversity in coming together. And they are so scared of it. They have to tell us to hate our trans siblings. They are so scared of it. They have to tell us to hate our immigrant siblings. And they are so scared of it. They have to tell us to hate our Black history that built this country. And we have to tell them no. We have to tell them we know we're stronger together. We have to tell them we know that we are tied in an inextricable web of mutuality, and what affects one directly affects all indirectly. And we have to resist in that way, in coming together across lines of difference, and to say that we are connected, we are united in a shared vision of what our multicultural, multiracial, multilingual democracy should be. They know we are on the precipice of a transformative moment in our society, in which we can show the world what it looks like to have people from all different backgrounds come together and make decisions in a functional, constitutional democracy. And that is why they're trying to break it. That is why they're trying to take away our education, because Liz, they know that knowledge is power.
Liz, we have about 2.5 minutes in our final segment of this hour. Liz, how can we support the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights? And then I want Reverend Owens to share with us, how can we support the efforts of the Disciples of Church, the Disciples of Christ, and if you could end us, Reverend Owens, on a word of hope. Liz, how can we support the organization?
Sure. First, go to our website. We're civilrights.org. We would love your treasure. We would also love come and learn, get that information, share it with everyone you know, get the fact sheets, get the analysis, get the reports, and then go to our Action Center and email your member of Congress and join our email list and share our social media. And we want to be connected with everyone out there. This is going to be all of us working together to achieve the America as good as its ideal. So really go to our website, www.civilrights.org.
Thank you, Liz. Reverend Owens, how can we support the Disciples of Christ? And can you lead us out on a word of hope?
Absolutely. Our website is simply disciples.org. We have churches across the U.S. and Canada. They're showing the book. I just wrote a Lenten devotional, which you can purchase at chalice.press. The focus of this is Jesus facing the last journey of his life, knowing that he was to die, but the teaching of resistance that he did all along the way. I have another book coming out in July called Staying at the Table, Being the Church We Say We Are. But I think every Christian, the thing that you can do in solidarity is that if you are a Christian who opposes these policies and you oppose Christian nationalism and the white supremacy that's tied in, call your legislators and let them know that you are a Christian who opposes this work, that you stand against the work of MAGA, that there are Christians who oppose this work, that we're not all in one lump sum, that we oppose Christian nationalism, and we are fighting for an honest and truthful understanding of what the Christian faith is all about. It certainly is not about hate of neighbor and disregard for the marginalized. So let your Congress people know that you are a Christian who cares about one another. And I think finally, if we could do that, love wins, right? Love in any way, shape, or form wins. And justice is, Cornel West says, is what love looks like in public. And so we have to be willing to act, and so that the people that we care about in our society are taken care of. That's love.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You've been listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. My very special guest has been Reverend Teresa Hord Owens, the General Minister and President of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada, and Liz King from the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights. When we come forward, we will continue our conversation. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.